you weren't clear, Prince Harry hates the British tabloid press. I don't know whether you got that. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel on the day before the release of Spare, Prince Harry's autobiography. To all my house guests, welcome. Make yourselves at home, make yourselves comfortable. To all my visitors who are here for the first time, if you'd like to become a house guest, don't forget to click subscribe and activate all your notifications. I'm Chez, this is Chez M0i, welcome to my place. So guys, this is this is very messy. Messy. That's one word that I'd use for all of this. This build up to Prince Harry's book. When they were talking about the documentary, the Netflix documentary, saying there were bombshell revelations, I didn't believe that. I was like, these are not bombshell revelations. This book, I've not read it because it's before the official release, except in Spain where it has been released. And even with that, no one's going to give you the full translation from beginning to end. Again, it's sound bites. So I'm not going to comment on the book because I haven't read it. I am going to comment on the interviews that I've seen. I saw the interview with Tom Bradby on ITV last night, and I saw the Anderson Cooper one this afternoon. On 60 Minutes. Now, I was under the impression that the 60 Minutes one was actually going to be 60 minutes. It was only half an hour. Harry seems to be doing the rounds with regard to this book because I think he's got another interview on a late night show in the States, and he did a breakfast show interview, was it yesterday morning? Within the last 24 hours anyway. And I managed to catch a bit of that. If you weren't clear, Prince Harry hates the British tabloid press. I don't know whether you got that from any of the interviews. I mean, in all seriousness, why did he decide to talk? That's the question that everyone's asking. Why are you talking now? And why has he been so detailed? Because no one wants to know all of that detail, but clearly people do want to know that detail because that's all everyone's talking about. He gives the reason as to why he's decided to tell everything in this book, because from what he says, he's tried to reach out to the family to discuss this in private, but anytime he tries, stories are leaked to the press, and this is the basis of his complaint, that anything that he tries to discuss in private with them, they conspire to leak this information to the press. Again, he talks about them wanting to not deal with issues. They're telling him that he's paranoid, that it's all in his imagination. So he's now decided to come out and give his account from his own mouth, in his own words, about his life for the last 38 years. Because everyone else has given their account of what they perceive his life to be and made money from it. And now he's being accused of giving all this information for profit. But I'll get to that at the end of this video, which I hope won't be that long. I don't know how long it's going to be. I'm going to try and keep it short. As usual, you have the rota of all the royal correspondents, all the royal experts who want to give their 2 cents worth. I'm not a royal expert, but I'm still going to give my 2 cents worth. The reason why I make reference to the royal correspondence is that I would have expected them to be really heavily biased against him, but in the last 2 weeks, I've found that they've been more objective than I've ever known them to be. And I don't know if that's on the back of what happened with Jeremy Clarkson. Maybe they were kind of self-censoring because they know that backlash will come if they really go in hard on Harry and Meghan. Maybe, I don't know. That's a theory. Anyway, I say that to say, of all the royal experts that I would give any credibility to, it will be Princess Diana's former butler, Paul Burrell. I saw him being interviewed by Lorraine Kelly, and I think this was 3 days ago on her show. And he articulates what I believe has happened with Harry. It's almost like he's had to release all of this anger that he's held since his mum passed. It's almost like he has been stuck in that time, and he finds it difficult to move forward because he's not received, in his view, he's not received the support that he should have done. I'll let you listen to this clip and I'll come back.
You know, we've got more on those revelations from Prince Harry in his book right now. Diana's former butler, Paul Burrell, joins me, and there's a lot of sadness in this, isn't there? There's an awful lot of sadness, and there's a thread running through, and that thread is his mum. You know, he talks about very private things. He talks about what it was like being told that his mother had died, and of course you were there at that time, and you can't even begin to imagine how distressing that must have been.
Yeah, he's a very angry, hurt young man, and he's still living those moments of when he lost his mother. When he talks about his father touching his knee at Balmoral and not hugging him, I understand that because Charles isn't a hugger, and the royals don't hug. I remember when Charles came to Paris, he came to see Diana's body, and he touched my lapel and said, are you all right, old thing? And that was all the comfort I got. They're not good at giving comfort.
Yeah.
And that's what Harry's trying to tell you. They're not like us. They're very different.
They are.
So I understand what Harry's going through.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. One thing I found in the book that was absolutely tragic and heartbreaking was the fact that he retraced his mother's final journey. He actually went in a car into that tunnel. He felt he had to do that.
Yeah, devastating. I mean, I've done it, and for me it was devastating, as I can't think what it would have been like for Harry to retrace her final moments. And he's actually gone through the final steps as well, and gone through to the hospital and done everything. And for a while he wanted to research his mother's death, and he was put off, I think, by the royals, who said it's been done to death and leave it. But I think the boys still feel that there's something that they don't quite understand about their mother's death. And remember, Lorraine, Harry is looking at all of this through an 11-year-old's eyes, through a boy who could not understand why his mother was no longer there. The mother that gave him the hugs, the mother that loved him to death, the mother that would write to him at school and say, I'm coming down to Ludgrove this weekend just to stand on the touchline, watch you play football, and give me a big squeeze, and I'll fill your pockets full of chocolate. That was his mummy he missed, and nothing ever replaced it.
No.
And as a child would think, I suppose, I don't want that wicked stepmother to take her place and fill her shoes. And in his head, again, he's talking as an 11-year-old child. He's not talking as a grown-up adult who knows that his father would need someone to get him through the grief too, because he'd lost the mother of his children, and he needed someone to support him on the way to being king. So, you know, it's all in the round, isn't it? It's easy to say, but 11-year-olds don't see the full picture and don't see the full adult world.
No, that's a very, very good point. I mean, in the book, he's so desperate to still have contact with his mother that he goes to some sort of spiritualist who tells him many things, as a lot of these people do, but also you can sense that he has some sort of comfort from that, perhaps.
Well, yes, because he knew that his mother did the same thing. His mother regularly visited psychics and spiritualists to find out answers to questions. And he knew that. So he's actually retracing his mother's steps again by going to seek more advice. But his mother would say, Harry, be careful, because that's a very dangerous world. And it's a world that's unknown, and you can get easily led down a path that isn't right. So I think she would counsel him and say to him, look, I've been there, I've done that. Leave it alone, because you don't need to go there.
It's just so sad that she's not here. She would be absolutely devastated by all of this. Although I wonder if it would actually have happened had she been here.
No, it wouldn't have happened, because, you know, it would have happened if, for instance, Harry had married Chelsea Davy or Cressida Bonus. I don't think all of this would have happened. It's because he married a 36-year-old woman who whispered in his ear, I want to change the world. His mother was 36 when she died. And I think Harry was hearing his mother's voice come through.
He did say that, yeah, that's true.
Really, it's all mixed up in Diana. Diana is a constant in both boys' lives.
But you have said before that Diana, you know, for all that she had her problems with the royal family and they're well documented, she believed firmly in the whole institution, and she would be devastated, I'm sure, by the damage that this is doing to not just as individuals, as human beings, but to the whole system.
Tremendous damage to the system, which is, you know, the monarchy. Diana supported the monarchy. She was proud of her boys, proud that they were royal princes, proud they were part of the royal family, and she was proud of that too. And she would not agree with Harry pulling the rug from underneath his brother's feet as he's on his way to be king, and she would want them to be together. And so, Harry, what are you doing? And what does it all serve? All this dirty laundry washed in public. You know, what is the end product of this? It's just a lot of hurt people, and it has to stop, because if it keeps escalating like this, there will never be a reconciliation. Because why would Harry and why would William and why would the king trust a boy that's going to come into their world and then leave that world and tell more stories about that world?
Do you think he'll go to the coronation, Paul? Do you think he will get an invite? Of course he will, because he's, you know...
Yes, he will be invited.
Yeah, do you think he should go?
You're right, he will be invited to the coronation. I don't think he will go. How could he possibly be sat in a house of God in Westminster Abbey, where his mother's funeral was, to watch his father be crowned king? It seems a little hypocritical to me when what he's been doing recently is try to dismantle the monarchy, not build it. And I think that would be very difficult for Harry and Meghan to be part of that congregation.
Oh, it is, you're right. Business as usual, though, for the royals. They'll just get on with it, won't they? They'll just do what they do. I mean, they'll be out and about today doing royal duties and whatever.
Yeah. Batten down the hatches, say nothing. There'll be complete silence, dignity in silence. And at Sandringham this morning, there'll be no newspapers. I can bet you, Prince Charles used to say to me at Highgrove, whenever there was a scandal in the newspapers, I don't want to see any newspapers in this house. If the princess wants a newspaper, she'll have to go into Tetbury and get it herself.
Ah, so they wouldn't even be
at
reading
Sandringham this morning, there's no newspapers.
Paul, listen, thank you very much for joining us and for your insight. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Right, I say that for me, Paul Burrell is the most credible of anyone with regard to this particular subject, because he knew Harry and William since they were kids, since they were small boys. And according to him, Diana, she called him the man that she trusted the most. He was her butler for 10 years. So if anyone's going to know anything, if I'm going to kind of listen to any of them, I'd listen to him, because he seems to have an insight that no one else does. And I just wanted to put that clip in there to just gain a different perspective from someone who's not saying the usual stuff that other people have been saying, if that makes sense. So it would appear that, and it was kind of evident that Harry, the event of his mum's death is what has shaped his life from that point on. It's profoundly affected him, and listening to what he's saying, he never received the support that he really should have done. And in my mind, if he had received that support, he would have been more mentally stable. I don't know what it's like to lose a parent at that age. I have lost a parent, but that's been in very recent. I did not lose a parent as a child, and I can't imagine what that would be like. And as he said in one of the interviews, that he now understands, he can appreciate the job that his dad had to breaking that news to him and his brother about his mother passing away. That he hopes that he will never have to be in that position. And that was the reason why he left with Meghan and his son. So I completely understand that. That makes more sense, as opposed to people saying that Meghan convinced him to go back to California with her. What he says there makes sense. He doesn't want to be a single father. He doesn't want his children to have no parents. And potentially in his mind, that's what could happen if he remains in this country. And I completely get that. In what Paul Burrell said, I also noted that he corroborated what Meghan had said in the Netflix documentary when she referred to Kate as not being a hugger. And everyone online went mad and said, oh, how dare you say that? They know how to hug. You just heard it from Paul Burrell. The royal family don't hug. They're not huggers. They don't do that. So, you know, whoever's going to come back and say, oh, you know, Meghan was lying, as they usually do, you've just heard it from someone who's close, not just a source. He's told you himself, the royal family do not hug. Having said that, you can see clearly that Harry is his mother's son. He wears his heart on his sleeve. Diana wore her heart on her sleeve. He's aired his grievances. Diana aired her grievances with regard to how she was treated in that family. They are very similar in character. When he talks about the revelation about him taking drugs, marijuana, magic mushrooms, cocaine, none of that was a shock to me, because I had seen the reports when he was a teenager, when he was stumbling out drunk out of nightclubs and ready to fight these paparazzi that were snapping him as he was coming out. So that wasn't a surprise. And they had an intervention within the family to try and get him some help with regard to his drug taking and his alcohol abuse. So I understand why he would do that, because if you've gone through such a traumatic experience and you believe that the only way to numb the pain is to block that pain out with alcohol and drugs. Millions of people have done it. Millions of people do it. You can't condemn him for that. As I said, if he'd got the help that he needed at the time of his mum's death, I believe all of this could have been avoided. Decades later, we see the result of unresolved trauma, unaddressed issues, because something so profound has taken place in someone's life. What he said about his mental health, because you can see it's clearly a mental health issue when Tom Bradby basically states that it's post-traumatic stress disorder. He says, no, it's not a disorder. I don't have a disorder. It's post-traumatic stress injury. This is not news concerning him talking about his mental health, because over a year ago, he spoke about it in an interview with Oprah, because they were doing this taking on this mental health initiative. And I'll play the clip here for you.
So 28 to probably 32 was a nightmare time in my life.
A royal life of public traumas and the long journey to recovery with years of therapy. In the new Apple TV Plus docuseries, The Me You Can't See, Prince Harry telling Oprah he felt helpless and angry after the death of his mother, Princess Diana. The ordeal leading him to drugs and alcohol to cope with the pain, struggling to accept the burdens of royal life, something he says his father, Prince Charles, knew well and told him he had to accept.
Just because you suffered, that doesn't mean that your kids have to suffer. In fact, quite the opposite. If you suffered, do everything you can to make sure that whatever negative experiences that you had, that you can make it right for your kids.
The Duke of Sussex shared the moment he knew he had to leave the royal family shortly before the birth of his first child.
Meghan decided to share with me the suicidal thoughts and the practicalities of how she was going to end her life. The scariest thing for her was her clarity of thought. She hadn't lost it. She wasn't crazy.
The docuseries, co-produced by Oprah and Prince Harry, features other interviews, including Lady Gaga sharing struggles with mental health.
It's a really very real thing to feel like there's a black cloud that is following you wherever you go, telling you that you're worthless and should die.
An estimated 1 in 5 U.S. adults suffer from mental illness. Raising awareness has been a long-term project for both Harry and Oprah.
I'm still the person that I was, but I'm just a better version of that.
And this docuseries, as we mentioned, is a partnership between Oprah and Prince Harry. And it was made to remind people that speaking up and seeking help is essential to recovery from anyone suffering from mental illness, and that it can affect anyone in any circumstance. Peter, Kristen?
Juan Venegas in Los Angeles this morning, and so important, so meaningful that both of them are speaking up, Lady Gaga and Prince Harry, about mental illness to try to help remove that stigma that still exists for so many.
You have to think it will help millions who are suffering with mental illness.
So when Lady Gaga talks about a dark cloud over your head, I understand exactly what she means, because I've experienced that. In my 20s, I experienced depression like that, and it's like it was an inescapable dark cloud that was pressing down on me. I've been on antidepressants. I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like, that voice in your head telling you that you're not worth anything, you're useless, you don't serve any purpose, and then you think to yourself, okay, so what's the point in me being here then? I've gone through that, so I get that. That's purely from an objective standpoint, because I don't listen to Lady Gaga's music. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of many people. Not a fan, but I had to agree with her when she said that, because I recognise that. So everybody knows, if you take it seriously, that mental health is a real thing, and if it goes untreated, the consequences can be devastating. When we talk about William, people say that William's got over it, the death of his mum. No, he hasn't got over the death. How can you get over the death of a parent? You don't get over it. You may manage it differently to a sibling, but you don't get over it. William has been destined to be king. He's been in preparation since the day he was born. So there's a facade that he has to maintain in order to make sure that his position is stable. The British public want their monarchs to be unflinching, unwavering, and maintain a stiff upper lip. That's the whole premise of keep calm and carry on. Because whatever goes on, death, scandal, whatever it is, they maintain this facade of never complain, never explain. But if you've watched the interviews, Harry says, never complain, never explain is just a motto, because they always complain and explain behind closed doors. William, the way that he would manifest that trauma, you can see, the allegation from Harry is that he physically assaulted him. And at Prince Philip's funeral, there was a confrontation there as well. And he used this code word on Mummy's life, because that means that if one of them say that, you have to hear that person has to be heard. But Harry says that didn't work in that situation. So for me, it's evident that William, and who can blame him, does have a short temper. There was a clip that had gone viral I can't remember how long ago, but it was fairly recent. I think it was over a year ago. Within the last 1 to 2 years, where he and his family were out on a bike ride on, I think it was the Sandringham estate, and there was a trespasser who he suspected to be a photographer, and he confronted him. And I'm going to play you the audio because I think they took this down from the internet, but I managed to find this clip. Listen very carefully to what William says.
Video has emerged. Apparently it's from last year, but this is Prince William. Apparently he was out cycling with his kids near the Sandringham Royal Estate, and someone was taking some photos of them. I would have thought the royals were pretty used to people taking photos of them, but the prince didn't like it. Have a look.
Talking around here looking for us and our children. I'm out for a quiet bike ride with my children on Saturday, and you won't even give me your name. You're outrageous, you're disgusting, you really are. How dare you behave like that? So where have you come from?
I've just walked up from West Newton.
So why are you here? I thought you guys had learned by now.
So he says, I thought you would have learned by now. Words to that effect. I don't have the audio in front of me, so I can't remember exactly, but you've heard it on that clip. So it's in the back of his mind all the time about his mum. It's still, it affects him. Do you think that Harry is the only one that hates the British press? William cannot stand them either. If you watch earlier clips of them when they were children, William is always shielding his face when he sees photographers. Always. He doesn't want to see them. He hates them. But he can't say that because, like Harry says, they work in hand in glove with the media because it's in their interest to work with the media. So William can't afford to turn against them like Harry has. Harry is the spare because his life is not destined in the way that William's is. William's been groomed to become the next in line to the throne. Harry is the spare in case something happens to William. Until such time, Harry is free to live his life how he wants within the parameters of the institution. But the institution has not worked for him since his mum died. And that's the whole point. No one's been listening to him. And it's got to the point now at the age of 38 where he, as an adult, feels that he needs to be heard because no one's listening. All of that self-destructive behaviour is not for nothing. That's got to have come from somewhere. And both William and Harry should have been able to speak openly, either to a therapist or within the family, about how their mother's death had impacted them. They, by all accounts, they weren't allowed to do that. And it's manifested in Harry in this way, and in William where he internalises it, but he seems to snap, and snap quite dramatically. And in this day and age, we can't just ignore this issue of mental health anymore. It's not embarrassing anymore. You know, at one time it was an embarrassment. You know, we don't talk about that in this family. We don't have that in this family. Why do we need to talk about that? Why do we need to talk about our feelings? Because we were born with feelings. We're human beings. We're not robots. We're not androids. Every single one of us have feelings. But again, within the institution, is keep calm and carry on. Nothing to see here. Stiff upper lip. Never complain, never explain. But sometimes you have to complain and you have to explain. Remember when Princess Diana died? That week following her death, leading up to the funeral, and again, the British public were mad at the Queen because they weren't seeing her. She was in Balmoral looking after these boys, and she didn't feel it necessary to come down to London to show her face. She did not gauge the public mood. It was Tony Blair that had to tell her, ma'am, you need to come down to London because your people want to see you. That's what I recall. That's what was said. And I remember the headlines, where are you? We need you. You know, people were being interviewed on the street. Oh, you know, she's so cold, she doesn't care. She doesn't care about Diana. And then she had to finally succumb. She came down from Balmoral and she had the boys there at Kensington Palace with the display of flowers. And you hear Harry talk about how surreal it was for him that all of these strangers who didn't know his mum were showing all this emotion, you know, their hands wet with tears, shaking their hands, him and William's hands. All of these strangers showing emotion, but those two were not allowed to show emotion. And you wonder why he's messed up. You wonder why he carries this with him. You wonder why he rails against the British media, because as far as he's concerned, they're responsible for his mum's death, and he won't move. He's not going to move from that. He's not going to move from that. So for everybody that's saying, oh, you know, he should shut up now, he should get over it, he should, you know, why is he saying all of this? He has a right to say it. He has a right to say it. If, you know, if you're, in my head, why is he going to risk potentially burning all bridges with his family, who he says he loves, for the sake of lies? Why would he do that? Why would he do that? People deal with grief in different ways, and it manifests in different ways. You can't tell someone to get over it, because their reaction and them talking about it all the time makes you feel uncomfortable. You can't tell someone to shut up because they're grieving. If the grief hasn't been addressed, they're going to continue to talk. And if you don't even have the support of your own family, because it's a generational cycle of no emotion, don't talk, don't explain anything, just carry on, business as usual. We don't live in that age anymore. As much as people would like to go back to those days, we don't live in that age anymore. The younger generation don't put up with that. They want to talk about everything. Social media gives everybody an opportunity to talk about everything. You know, I'm sitting here in front of a camera talking to you about my opinions about people that I don't know, which is weird, because that's not normally me. Like I said before, in preceding videos, social commentary is not something that I would have ever imagined myself talking about on this channel. But I find myself doing it, and it's just my opinion. It's just my perspective, no one else's. It doesn't matter to anyone else. No one else could care less. So when Harry now talks about racism, or the question of racism is brought up, I noted that he's made the distinction between unconscious bias and racism, because he was attacked in the press for being racist, and I think it had to do with the Nazi uniform. Let's just park that there for a minute. So this Nazi uniform business, I saw the picture of that when it was on the newspaper, and I was like, I'm not surprised, because there are earlier pictures, black and white pictures of the Queen and her sister and her parents doing the Hitler salute. I wasn't surprised. I was like, okay, but they have links with Germany. Why is anyone surprised that Harry's in the Nazi uniform at a fancy dress party? Where I disagreed with Harry on this is that he didn't take full accountability. He said that William and Kate had encouraged him to do that. This is not in the interview. This is apparently in the book, but I've not read the book, so I shouldn't do this, but this is what I've heard. That Kate and William encouraged him to do it. I think he was old enough to realise that for him to even ask tells me that he knew on some level it was not acceptable, but he wanted the get out clause, so he asked their permission. Then that's something that I was like, no, take accountability, Harry, take accountability, because you knew that was going to be offensive. Obviously, he realises his mistake now and he's fully apologised. And why I bring that up is because if he'd remained in the institution where he sees that all the time, his level of self-awareness would not have been raised to the level it is now. It's only because he stepped away from that and his wife is of a different heritage that he's now aware, where it could have been construed that he was racist, but he wasn't even aware of that. So that tells me that that institution, even if they don't say they're racist, they do display unconscious bias. And then in the interview with Tom Bradby, he brought up the issue of Susan Hussey, and he doesn't believe she's racist. Race just plays a part in this society all the way through the fabric of this society. Whether people want to admit it or not, it does. Because you've got someone at the top of the pyramid who, as far as people are concerned, shouldn't be there by virtue of the fact that she has a heritage which is not worthy of that position. But he's recognised that. And he realises that his children, his own children, his offspring could be subject to that same unconscious bias, if not racism, as they get older. So, in my mind, he's more than redeemed himself. I don't think he has to keep apologising for that Nazi uniform incident, but he should have taken responsibility for that, because he did know it was wrong. Otherwise, he wouldn't have asked them. That's my opinion. Like I said, as he's stepped out of the bubble of the British royal family, he sees things through a different lens now. Because you can hear the frustration and the anger in his voice when he speaks in these interviews. And he says himself that this whole process, this last 2 years of doing the documentary and writing this book, has been cathartic on some level for him. He said it's been painful, but it's been cathartic because it's helped him to confront his feelings where he buried them for so long. And that is damaging. You could say that he is damaged. You could say that he is damaged. And it's obvious that he misses his family. For me, him saying that he wants to reconcile with his family, in all honesty, if they're going to continue to adopt this never complain, never explain attitude, I don't see how that's going to be possible. It would be unusual. I'd be shocked if they do that. And some people have argued that the way that Thomas Markle had come out and said all of these things, because he wasn't being listened to, this is what Harry is experiencing now. And I get that. But Thomas Markle had an opportunity to be part of their lives, but he listened to his older daughter, because she even admitted that all of that was done for money. She admitted that. I saw it live when she was on Good Morning Britain, and she said that. So yeah, comparisons can be drawn, but it's not entirely the same. I get the overall, superficially it's similar, but Harry's grievances are deep rooted, going back decades, going back to the point in time when his whole life changed when his mum died. He's not being listened to. How many of us have gone through a level of frustration and said and done things because we've not been listened to? So him wanting to reconcile, as I say, I don't see that happening anytime soon. I mean, him being like this is the same as, to an extent, Princess Margaret was when she was the spare to the Queen. It was just the two of them. And everything that she did made her look bad, but made the Queen look good. In my opinion, I wasn't, this is kind of before my time, but I was around when Princess Margaret, kind of, with all her scandals. I remember those. I remember the scandals with her affairs and everything. And she was resentful. She was resentful because she couldn't live the life that she wanted. Harry can actually live the life that he wants, but the price that he pays for that is that they're going to keep him out. They're going to shun him. His family's going to shun him. And I think he just has to be resigned to the fact that his blood family is not going to bring him back into the fold because he's chosen to make a life outside of that institution. At the beginning of the video, I talked about the money aspect. People are saying that he's doing this for money and he's making millions and millions. I said to myself, if Harry is the person that I believe him to be, he's not going to gather all this money for himself. He has to be donating this money to charity. No one talked about this. No one has talked about this at all from all the things that I've listened, all the commentary that I've listened to and read, no one has said that. They're all assuming that he's going to keep this money for himself. So I thought, let me just look and see what's happening with the proceeds from this book. And sure enough, he's donating the proceeds to charity. Whether that's a saving grace, I don't know. But I just found it interesting that no one wanted to talk about this, or maybe they weren't aware. I think everything that needs to be said has been said on so many other channels. This book hasn't even been released yet, and everybody's said pretty much what needs to be said. Everyone's got their own perspectives. This is just mine. It's not an in-depth analysis because the interviews, so much information, and I've got like things that I need to do. I'll hold my hands up and say that I did pre-order it on Audible only because they had a free trial. So I'll listen to that as and when, just to make sure that I've got the full context of what he's talking about, and just put that to bed. Whether he's going to put that to bed, I don't know, because he doesn't know whether he's going to go to the coronation in May. If he's invited, which he most probably will be, or whether he goes is a different matter altogether. So we'll just see what happens over the next few months, and whether this is going to, it's not going to damage the royal family. I don't think it is, because they're going to make sure it doesn't. Diana said stuff in the past that could have they said, oh, this is going to damage the royal family. How they didn't do it damage the royal family. She was exited before that happened, unfortunately. And you just think to yourself, if she was around today, what would life be like for them if she was still alive today? Like I said, if the palace responds, I'd be shocked. I just wonder whether in a world where everything is so forensically scrutinised, can they afford to continue to keep their head in the sand? Because these young people, they're not for that. They want you to explain everything. They want to know why. You can't just ignore them. They need an explanation. And these young people are the ones that potentially could decide whether the monarchy stays or goes. It's not us oldies and people older than me. We'll be gone within the next 20, 30 years. It's these young ones that the royal family need to be worried about, because their opinion matters. And that's why it was so important for them to unite the Commonwealth through the work that Meghan and Harry were doing, but they missed the opportunity, as I've said in a previous video. I also think that there comes a point when you have to resign yourself to the fact that you may never get closure on certain issues. I've been through that, where something traumatic has happened to me, and I've never been given an explanation as to why that happened. And I've just concluded that I will never get closure. So for me, the best revenge is to live well. And that's what I think Harry should do. He says that he's happy. He says that he's at peace. He loves his family. But I think as he's made the decision to live his life in a different country, he should just enjoy his children, live the best life. And before Meghan came on the scene, he was saying that he wanted to leave. And, you can clearly see that Meghan was his escape route, whether whether people want to admit that or not, because she wanted to stay. He said that. I mentioned that in a previous video, the documentary. He says that she wanted to stay, but they couldn't stay because of how they were being treated. So I say the best revenge, if your grievance is that deep, the best revenge is to live well. Just live your best life, Harry, and don't worry about them. They've got bigger issues. They've got bigger issues. Sometimes I think these guys, they want to escape, but they can't, because for them to, Edward VIII, was it? The Queen's uncle who abdicated, I can't remember which number he was, but he decided he was going to leave. If he had not left, Princess Elizabeth wouldn't have become Queen, and there would have been a different drama to what's going on now, from all those years ago, 80 odd years ago, to the present day. So you see, when someone makes a decision the consequences don't just affect them, it affects generation after generation. And I say that to say, Harry has made up his mind to leave. Because if the way that he and his wife are being treated now, and they're not being supported, he can't take that chance with his children. He can't. And I don't blame him. And I wish him all the best. So I'm going to wrap up this video, guys. Those are my thoughts, my 2 cents for what they're worth. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button. For all of you who are visiting for the first time and you want to become house guests, don't forget to subscribe and activate all your notifications. Comment below if you have a different perspective to me, or if you want to add to anything I've said, or you think that, you know, I've missed anything, or there's something worth mentioning that I haven't talked about. I'm going to wrap up this video, guys, and just want to thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day, and you should catch me in the next video.